I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanakimes. All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into another episode of the Patriots Daily podcast here on the CLNS Media Network, powered by Prize Picks. And today we are powered by our lovely colleague, Doug Kyed from the Boston Herald, here to hash out the banger that himself and Andrew Callahan published for the Herald yesterday morning, going through all of their intel from the NFL Scouting Combine that just finished up in Indianapolis on Sunday. So myself, Taylor, prepped a bunch of questions. We're going to pepper Doug here, kind of talk about it, parse through it, and see what's going on with this Patriots offseason, what their plans are, free agency from the draft, and all things that Doug was able to gather out there in Indianapolis. First and foremost, we won't touch all of it because go over to the Boston Herald and read the whole thing. It was jam-packed, stockpiled with info, so we'll give some tease. We'll leave some spoilers here, or we won't leave all the spoilers here. But Doug, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. And first of all, before we get into it, how we doing? Are you and Taylor recovered from a great week out at the Scouting Combine?
Yeah, at this point, I feel like I am. I've got a couple nights of like 7 hours of sleep, but the first night I came back, we were like flying and surviving that first day on like 3.5 hours of sleep. So that one I was barely functioning for, but now by Monday morning, or by Monday afternoon, I should say, I'm doing much better.
Good stuff.
I thought I was going to do okay. Then you dropped this awesome piece, and I was like, well, I guess I got some free agents I got to watch. So, yeah, I've been trying to do better. As you all know, based on the delayed time, was my fault. A little confusion on my part, but we're chugging along. I'm going in a nice long walk in the 25-degree air. Maybe it'll reboot the senses, but hey, I'm glad to be talking to my boys. So happy to be here. Excited to talk about the great work you and our colleague, Andrew Callahan, did this weekend.
Absolutely. So let's actually start right there then, Taylor. You mentioned the free agents that the Patriots could potentially have their eyes on. Taylor's been pumping out the film on Twitter basically as we speak. But you guys sort of wrote about how the Patriots in the wide receiver position, where T. Higgins, it's pretty much known that if available, the Patriots want T. Higgins. Now, it doesn't sound like that could necessarily happen. Cincinnati, at least rumors coming from there is that they could end up or will end up putting the franchise tag on him. Same with Chris Godwin in Tampa Bay. They extended his contract at least throughout the next couple weeks so that he doesn't necessarily hit free agency as early as everybody else. So doesn't sound like he could pry loose there. So I guess your thoughts on the position in general, kind of what you guys gathered and heard, and who could their second tier targets be. I know there was a thought of a potential DK Metcalf trade. You guys wrote that was sort of something they were kicking the tires on. I don't know how much further it got from there. But thoughts on the receiver position and what you guys were kind of able to gather there.
Yeah, it's really one of the tougher ones because you want that top tier wide receiver. Like you can kind of fill out other positions a little bit better through the mid tier, through the middle class. Really what the Patriots need is a number one target for Drake May, and T. Higgins would have been perfect. But even if the Bengals franchise him and it's not a long-term deal, the idea of still adding him with like a trade and an extension, like T. Higgins is good. We all know that he would be the number one pass catcher with the Patriots, but it doesn't sound like it's a situation where the Patriots would want to give up significant draft capital and then also have to sign that guy to a $30+ million extension. So Chris Godwin, if he becomes available, he's one that they're expected to pursue. There's people who are fans of his in the building. But at the same time, there's a realization that he's probably not going to leave the Bucs. So that kind of takes the second offer off the table. We had heard that not expected to pursue Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs, Cooper.
The old heads.
Yeah, exactly. Cooper just seems to have kind of lost a step a little bit at this point. With Diggs coming off the injury, he's been a little bit of a headache, obviously, at times in other places. He'd probably want to go somewhere that he can win. So those are two that I was kind of thinking originally, like, maybe Cooper wouldn't be the worst possibility. He's still relatively young, but just a lot of tread on those tires at this point. So yeah, Metcalf, that's been discussed internally. At the same time, like, do you necessarily want him to be the highest paid player, the best guy in your organization, if you don't really have a lot of ties to him. So that makes that one a little bit difficult as well. Cooper Kupp, I think, would be a possibility if he's released. Doesn't sound like the Patriots would be, it doesn't sound like teams will want to trade for Cooper Kupp. If Deebo Samuel only went for a 5th round pick when he's making $17 million, what's Cooper Kupp going to go for when he's 32 years old or whatever it is, and he's got a salary of $20 million this year? Right. So if he gets released, that becomes a little bit more of a possibility. One kind of dark horse candidate that I would throw out there would be Joshua Palmer, the Chargers wide receiver. The expectation is that he's going to be paid a little bit more than you might expect, just given the wide receivers available out there on the market. I believe he's still only 25 years old. He's got, he's been averaging right around like 500, 600 yards per season, 10 touchdowns in his 4-year career. He wouldn't be like a game changer, but at the same time, I think that he would raise the floor of what the Patriots have in the wide receiver room, and he would come in as a starter one way or the other. And yeah, just like a younger one, probably the youngest free agent option at wide receiver. And because of that, and because, maybe there's some upside there, that would be one other name at wide receiver that I would monitor.
Wasn't exactly the name I was hoping for. I'm waiting for the Darius Slayton smoke to come out of somewhere. But at the same time, Joshua Palmer has been one of the few reliable pass catchers that Justin Herbert's had in his career. And he's definitely a guy I feel like I need to start looking a little bit more into, because there aren't a ton of names, but kind of shifting gears to a position where there are more names where you could potentially get some difference makers on the defensive line. Now, you mentioned Milton Williams. That's a name that's popped up a lot, really probably the premier pass rusher when you tie pedigree, age, and all those things. But you mentioned that Josh Sweat, when the thought's kind of been those guys lined up together for so long. Talk about Ronnie Stanley, Patrick McCarry, maybe the defensive version of that. But you mentioned they're not really going to be interested in Sweat. So I was curious, why exactly, based on what you heard, wouldn't he be a fit for what they're going for? And were there any other names that came up in that discussion, considering the edge market? You got some guys that could be difference makers, but some guys are banged up. A lot of guys are banged up. Some guys haven't had a huge role. So it's an interesting class as well.
It is. Sweat, there's a little bit of an injury concern there, I believe, with Sweat. And then also just the fact that, the Patriots are going, like, they know they have to sign players. They know they have to sign veterans. They have to bring in starters, but they're still not going to be irresponsible when they're spending this offseason. Like, they're not just going to spend a bunch of money on guys that they don't fully believe in. And I think that Sweat is someone who is going to make a lot of money in free agency. And maybe that's just not the type of guy that they want to pay all of that money for. But the edge market is it's a little bit similar to wide receiver, where you've got the guys at the top. It would be a major surprise to me if they were going after Khalil Mack too, just because veteran player, probably going to want to go to a winner. Harold Landry is definitely someone that I would monitor. I know he's not available yet, but usually when you see trade rumors surrounding a player, someone's been permitted to seek a trade, whatever it is, that's kind of what's going on with Harold Landry right now. Usually those players wind up getting released. So that's another one where, similar to Cooper Kupp, if he comes available via release, I think that would be interesting. And I think that would be a fit given what he was able to do with Vrabel and Milton Williams and Terrell Williams in Tennessee. I have also heard that Vrabel hasn't really been pounding the table to bring in a bunch of guys they worked with the Titans. So if they did bring him in, might be one of the only ones. Beyond that, though, Chauncey Golston, I know that he's had a lot of fans in free agency. He's maybe a little bit more that mid-tier option. Yeah. And it's there's just not a lot of other guys out there that I would necessarily immediately point to at edge. Maybe Malcolm Kuntz. He missed all of last season though, so you're really kind of basing that off 2023, but maybe you could get a little bit more of a bargain there with him as well. So yeah, not the sexiest names at defensive end, but they definitely need someone in that weak side edge position to really be able to get after the passer.
And this is something too, sort of on that note, with not only the options on offense, but defense as well, really, where you mentioned Vrabel has mandated essentially that they want toughness, they want play demeanor, they want football character, and kind of setting those as non-negotiable. So they're not going to go and spend that money on just guys like a DK Metcalf, who I wrote about it this morning. So went on the Katie Nolan's podcast last month and said, like, yeah, I don't think New England's a fit because I don't like the weather. So that,
Right.
as much as I know our colleague Alex Barth has been pounding the table for a guy like DK Metcalf, they're not just going to spend draft capital to go get a guy like that. And I think that as much as the Cooper Kupp fit, I don't know how much, some other people like it, but bringing in a veteran like that in a market where Godwin and Higgins are going to go, you bring in a guy like that into the room who has done it before, has won a Super Bowl, is a vested veteran in this league, could end up being a fit potentially at the wide receiver position. I guess looking at sort of being out in Indy, the draft aspect of things, I know you guys had wrote that Will Campbell or Mason Graham could be a fit at pick number 4. I know our colleague as well, Mark Daniels and the Mass Live crew, wrote about how Will Campbell's arm length and that the measurements won't really hinder them from categorizing him as a tackle. Do you believe in that same sort of, thinking, right? Because he comes in at a shorter wingspan as well. Do you still believe that after coming in short on both the wingspan and the arm length, that they would still potentially consider taking a guy like that at pick number 4, or would it be a trade back scenario? And how could they kind of monitor that situation with the 4th overall pick?
I think it would still be in consideration. It's just so early. Like, what are we, 53 days away from the draft or whatever it is? So a lot can still happen at this point. I do think that with some people in the organization, I know that they would welcome a trade back, that they would like to stockpile as many top 100 picks as possible in this draft. And I think that there is a realization that people around the league think they're in a good position at number 4 overall. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that assessment unless 2 quarterbacks go off the board within the top 3. Because like if 2 quarterbacks go off the board, then you can get Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. If they don't, then you're kind of in this weird middle zone where, it's like Mason Graham, who's undersized. Oh, he's like weighed 24 pounds less than he was listed at. Will Campbell, who's got shorter arms. Jalen Walker, who you don't really know if he's going to be worth that pick. You've got some other guys in that mix, but like one possibility if they trade down would be Tetairoa McMillan. I have heard that there's someone within the organization pretty high up who's a big fan of McMillan. Heard that he interviewed well with the Patriots as well, which is obviously a good sign. And like we were talking about, like you want to find an X receiver, you want to find a top tier wide receiver. There's not that many of those like T Higgins, Tetairoa McMillan types out there. So that could be a possibility. Campbell, it really just is like they have to decide whether he's athletic to make up for shorter arms. He did test well. So obviously that's a really good sign. Played well in the SEC. But yeah, I don't know. Like one person I talked to over the last week was like, I think 2 quarterbacks could go in the top 3. One person basically was saying like, yes, I've heard that's possible. Another said that like, it's possible they could go. And a final person was like, I don't know. Like with Shedeur Sanders, seems like he's kind of falling a little bit. And like, it's really still so up in the air right now coming out of the combine about where the quarterbacks are going to go that it's kind of hard to say exactly what the Patriots still do at that number 4 overall pick, but they're going to have some options. People I talk to think that the talent really starts to fall off right around like the 10th overall range. So like, even if you trade down, you don't want to trade down that far, but there are a lot of quarterback needy teams within the top 10. Like I look at the Saints at number 9. They're a team that's always willing to trade up if they really believe in a guy. Totally. So like, let's say that Cam Ward starts falling or something like that, and the Patriots are sitting there at 4. That'd be great to move down to 9th overall. Maybe you pick up an additional 2nd round pick or whatever it is. But yeah, it's just so early on the draft. I wish I could give a better answer, but it seems like there's a lot of balls still in the air there.
Like we still have pro days. There's a lot more information gathering that still needs to be done.
Yeah.
It is kind of tough. And I guess you kind of hope that the Giants, because this regime probably needs to win to save their jobs. So you're hoping, hey, we need a quarterback. We need to be aggressive with this. Maybe Tom Brady and the Raiders, if they're not able to get somebody in the building, they say, hey, Brady and Shedeur have been connected for a while. I know they work together. So maybe he says, hey, I know the kid. I'm going to take a chance on him. But you also hope that the Patriots going into this draft, you wish that they could rely on some of the picks they made last year. I know you mentioned that when it comes to free agency and acquiring guys, they're not going to say, oh, we drafted this guy, he's set. They're going to want people over that. And I think that really is the key. That was an offensive heavy draft. And when you look at the offense, they mostly lack experience. There are a lot of guys that don't know how to win, so you probably need more veterans in that room. But are there any players from that sophomore class, and I'll even lump in some of the juniors, like Keon Whites and Marte Mapus, where Keon showed flashes last year, but there's still that lack of consistency in finishing plays. And Marte Mapu shows you the flashes of the range of the ball hawking, but also blows a lot of assignments, and you're just like, I don't really know what I'm getting. So how does the organization feel about the recent draft picks? Are there guys they're optimistic about where they say, hey, we just don't want to put him in the spotlight, but we're hoping he can seize the opportunity? And are there some guys where they're saying, you know what, new system, new regime, we may not be quite as high on some of these young players?
Yeah, they are still high on last year's draft. They're not giving up on it at this point. But like you mentioned in our article, like, yeah, if they've drafted someone recently in like the 3rd or 4th round, they're not going to go into free agency and be like, no, we're all set at that position. We already have so-and-so, because like those guys just haven't been good enough yet where you can fully depend on them. But I would just go like pick by pick as far as last year's draft goes. Jalen Polk, there definitely is still some optimism there. There's people within the organization who think that he would be best in the slot, where like you stick him in the slot. He's your slot receiver. You kind of want to avoid him being more of an outside receiver. I know there were comps to Jacoby Myers for him last year. Like maybe if they used him in that regard next season, then he would wind up being better. Caedan Wallace, I've heard that Doug Marrone likes Caedan Wallace.
It's huge.
Okay.
It is big. At the same time, I was talking to someone else who was like, yeah, I mean, if we grab 2 tackles and then Caden's our 3rd tackle, we're in great shape next year. So like it's like
not that high.
It's still, yeah, exactly. Like, and maybe
that's
just like one man's opinion. It would be interesting to talk to Marrone about it, but like I think that you could have him as your right tackle, but like it's just not guaranteed. And last year it was just a disaster for him. What we heard was that he had a high ankle sprain early in the season. And then what was it, week 4, he actually also then fractured the ankle as well. So that was why it took him so long to come back from that injury. Layden Robinson still has some fans in the building. He probably wound up playing a little bit more than they wanted him to last year. And then Javon Baker, we were talking to one person at the Combine who still thinks that like he's the most talented wide receiver in that room. And like, it's basically nowhere to go but up for Javon Baker at this point, because he had 1 catch last year.
Like the Kayshon Boutte story a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. But, you know, I also did hear that he and Vrabel have actually gotten off to a decent relationship. So that's a very good sign, obviously. And like, you can kind of see that with Javon Baker and Mike Vrabel. Like maybe he's Vrabel's type of guy that like tries to reel him in a little bit, get everything on the same page. And like, just as far as like, it's a start, it's a fresh start for Javon Baker, where like maybe if the same crew from last year was still here, they'd be like, that guy didn't do anything for us. He couldn't get on the field. Like, we're giving up. He's the one guy from that draft class where like this new regime really might help him in a big way. Getting Todd Downing in there, getting Josh McDaniels on there. They have no preconceived notions about him. Mike Vrabel, all these guys have no preconceived notions. So maybe that winds up working out. Like, I still don't have the highest hopes, but he's just got so much talent that you'd like the Patriots to be able to mold it into something, you know, really positive.
Love it. All right. We'll get back into the intel. We'll get back into the draft stuff. But first, a quick word from our friends over at Prize Picks. We'll be right back. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. And all you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. So run your game all season long on Prize Picks. They now offer Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. And the second half of the basketball season is officially here, and the race to the playoffs is heating up on Prize Picks. So don't miss your chance to cash in as the league's best fight for playoff positioning. You think LeBron James will get more than 24 points? You think Giannis will get more than 35? Cook up those hot takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season. All you got to do is sign up on the Prize Picks app today. Download the app and use that code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. That is our friends over at Prize Picks. Make sure you head over there. Use that code CLNS. You get those $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. No Celtics tonight, but they'll be back at it later on in the week as they try to get banner 19 up in the TD Garden now as well. All right, let's get back into it, Doug. I have a question along the lines of something that you wrote about the front office. Pat Stewart leaves to take the general manager job at Nebraska. A lot of guys doing that, making that jump lately. You've seen it, obviously. Michael Lombardi goes there, but just in general, plenty of college teams kind of taking it to the pro level in Division I NCAA. So he leaves, goes to the Cornhuskers. And it kind of sounded, at least the way I read it from you guys, that there could be some more front office shakeups on the horizon because of that move, where there's going to be a trickle-down effect. There's obviously the questions as well about Elliot Wolf and his standing in that room, because Ryan Caedan comes in. Mike Vrabel is sort of running point on everything personnel as well as team. Do you think there's a chance that Wolf ends up being the odd man out here? I know there's been plenty of, talking nice about one another. The both of them, Vrabel mentioned Elliot's name plenty of times during that opening press conference. But do you think there's a chance that, after the draft eventually, that things could kind of move south with Wolf and that he could end up on the outside looking in?
I think it's a possibility, if only just because there does still seem to be some uncertainty there. At this point, it's status quo. He's working well with Vrabel. He's working well with Caedan. So I think at this point I would expect him to be back, but it's still an uncertainty, because it's really an interesting power structure there in the front office for the Patriots, where Vrabel's got to be at the top, or I guess the Crafts are at the top, but then Vrabel is at the top as far as football people go. And some people even think that John Stryker is the number 2 there, because he's Vrabel's right-hand man. He was involved in personnel. He was involved in draft. He's going to be involved in strategy, which is essentially coaching and game management. People consider him to be a potential general manager of the future in the NFL. And he's got his hands in a lot of pots there for the Patriots right now. And then it would be Elliot Wolf is still up there. Ryan Caedan has a VP role. Alonzo Highsmith is someone that Elliot Wolf brought in. Matt Gross still has a director title for player personnel. So that role that Pat was in as pro scouting director is a little bit further down the line than it would be on most teams. So I think that for now, at least through free agency, they just kind of weather the storm, all hands on deck to fill that role. They've got enough people above that director of pro scouting role where they'll be fine. But it's going to be really telling, I think, in let's say May, when they fill that role, if it's a Vrabel and Caedan guy, if it's a promotion from within, which would essentially be an Elliot Wolf guy, or if it's someone that no one's worked with before, let's call it the Thomas Brown type hire, someone who's completely outside. And that also might be more of a Vrabel thing. But yeah, the more guys that Vrabel and Caedan are able to bring in, the more they kind of infiltrate the front office a little bit and gain more and more power. So it's going to be a really interesting thing. I think that Wolf has already, probably lost some control this offseason. If he was the guy who was in charge of personnel last year, I think that Mayo certainly had some say, but not in the same way that Mike Vrabel does. And that was the other thing that I really heard, was that last year, the structure was all messed up because everyone was used to Bill Belichick being that third guy under the Crafts. When Mayo got hired, Wolf wasn't that guy because he wasn't actually named an EVP until May. Mayo wasn't experienced enough. So Robin Glaser kind of slotted herself up as that top most powerful person below the Crafts. And then that kind of waned a little bit as the year went on. So now there's a lot of people who are happy with the way that the structure is now, with Vrabel as that most powerful person in the organization, just because it brings everyone back to the way that things were when Bill Belichick was the head coach.
I will cut you off, Taylor, just because we do have some breaking Patriots adjacent news, and that is that T. Higgins has officially been franchise tagged.
There we go.
By the Cincinnati Bengals. He tweeted "tag" period in lowercase letters. It doesn't seem like he's too thrilled with that one, but it has been confirmed by the NFL Network. So it does sound like T at least for now, is under team control with Cincinnati. I don't know how much he clearly likes that, but we can kind of chop that up for a second, but then move on to what Taylor was going to ask next here.
Yeah, I just had to tweet out a little something. Yeah, he does seem thrilled. That's very funny. If I were getting the tag for the second year in a row and you didn't actually want to negotiate with me the first time, I'd be pretty salty too. But anyway, could you touch more on what exactly Robin Glazer's role was and why she's someone who left the organization? Because just anything I've heard hasn't exactly been positive. It sounds like just kind of a figure that really this new regime kind of, putting their stamp on it seemed like a pretty necessary person to maybe move on from.
Yeah, and she dealt with a lot of contracts. So like in one way, something that we put in our story was that like she would go around to different departments and say like, all right, do we have to be spending this much money on this thing? Do we have to be spending this much money on this thing? Like kind of cutting costs a little bit, it's like, that's not a popular role to be in if you're in a department and the person keeps coming by and being like, do we really need all this? Do we really need all these resources? Whatever. So like, that was one thing that I was hearing down there. Since we actually published the article, because she was in charge of contracts, some of the coaches that signed last year, like some of the assistant coaches were signed to like pretty hefty contracts last year. And it was like a little bit of a surprise maybe for some of the newer people coming in that like, oh man, now we have to like keep paying this guy for his like 3-year contract that was like much higher than anticipated. Or like for in Alex Van Pelt's position, like to be paid as what was he like top 10, top 15 OC or whatever, when he was like the 13th guy interviewed, you know what I mean? So it's like,
right.
I think that they were looking at some of that and being like, oh man, now we have to keep paying these contracts. So I think that showed a little bit of maybe inexperience in a football role that was being dealt with Robin Glaser. But we were also hearing from someone else down there that like, it felt like when she came in, she was kind of changing things to change things. And one of the big things was that like wanted to get like everything that Bill Belichick was doing to be reversed and to be done a different way. And there were people in the building being like, a lot of what Bill did worked. So like, maybe we don't need to change everything. So there are absolutely people in the organization who still love Robin Glaser. I think that she did a lot of positive things. I think that a lot of things that she was doing for whatever it was, 15 years under Bill Belichick went a little bit unnoticed and unrecognized. But then when Mayo came in, she did take on a bigger role in football and just didn't necessarily have the experience to be making the changes that she was.
All right, one quick word. Sorry. One more thing. Got to pay the bills one more time for our friends. A special new actually feature here on the Patriots Press Pass channel. Taylor will tell you about it right now. We'll talk about it for a second, and then we'll wrap things up with Doug on everything going on with the Patriots offseason plan. We'll be right back. That's not the video I wanted. Please hold. There we go.
What's going on, everyone? Taylor Cowles here for CLNS Media with a very exciting announcement. Here at Patriots Press Pass, we will be introducing bonus tiers. Now, this will not affect any of the content that hopefully you've grown to know and love over here at Patriots Press Pass. It's all going to be some brand new stuff and extras so we can connect with you more and also provide you some more in-depth and high-quality content. Hopefully, you guys are going to like it. Here are the tiers and what you should be expecting from all these new bonuses. At Tier 1, we've got Rookie Starter. That'll come with ad-free content, early access to videos, 5% off of all merchandise, and even custom emojis. At Tier 2, we've got All Pro. Once again, ad-free content, early access, 10% off merchandise, custom emojis, but that'll also come with player profile film reviews and draft profiles. At Tier 3, we've got GOAT status. Same as all the other tiers, but it's going to be 20% off of all merchandise, and we're also going to have custom segments, Discord chat rooms with myself and other show hosts, as well as live film reviews with myself and whomever we've got on the podcast for that day. Hoping to have some pretty fun guests.
Plenty of good stuff coming here on the channel, Taylor. I know you can't necessarily peel back the curtain totally, but what can we look forward to here with our new tiers here on Patriots Press Pass?
Pretty much what I said. A lot of bonus content, and I honestly said everything. I'm gonna end up spoiling. I'm freaking Tom Holland over here, so everything I said, look forward to it twice as much because I'm acknowledging it twice.
Love it. Let's go. Nothing will change. We'll have all the same stuff here on the channel, all the pods, Patriots Daily, Pat's Beat, Pat's Interference, Andrew Callahan, Greg Bedard pod, Mike Giardi. Everybody stays, but we're adding some more for you guys. So check it out. You can check it out on the YouTube channel, and you can sign up for the tiers that we just mentioned. All right. My sort of overarching final question here for you, Doug. It's a 30,000-foot view, but I guess of everything you and Andrew were able to take away from your week out in Indianapolis, all the intel you gathered, what is like the number one piece of info that you would think would make Patriots fans the most optimistic for this Patriots rebuild? And what's the one thing that you look at and it's like, well, let's pump the brakes. Let's not necessarily be pessimistic, but what should we be wary about moving forward here with the team?
So as far as optimism goes, I spoke to someone within the division who called Mike Vrabel and Drake May a deadly combination. And he said it was scary to see them putting all the right pieces in place in this organization. And that was specifically Drake May at quarterback, Mike Vrabel as head coach, Ryan Caedan and Elliott Wolf in the scouting department. So this is someone who believes in both Ryan Caedan and Elliott Wolf. So yeah, people within the division are a little bit scared of what the Patriots are doing here. And the fact that they seem to be rebuilding maybe at a faster pace than some people expected. I know it's been some down years, but really does seem like the Patriots are going to be able to bounce back pretty quickly. And to kind of build off that as well, we had someone saying that Drake May was going to be a top 5 quarterback in the next 2 years. And the caveat there was I would say 2025, but they weren't sure if they were able to put the pieces around him right away to get him into that tier. But with it from by 2026, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and Drake May would be in that conversation. So I think those are the biggest things to be optimistic about. As far as pessimism goes, I think that it really is just kind of this draft in general. Having the 4th pick overall, you would like there to be stronger options there. You would like there to be quarterbacks that teams want to trade up for. You would like there to be a bona fide number 1 option that they could get, a blue chip player that they could absolutely get at number 4 overall. And just the fact that people within the organization are saying hey, maybe we could trade back. I think that presents a little bit of pessimism that you're only in the top 5 so often. And to have the 4th overall pick in a draft where maybe you don't have those a star-studded draft class is certainly not it's not an ideal position for the Patriots to be in. Right
so now. It's Joe Milton's fault basically that they won that game, and we're not sitting here debating Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. We have our fingers crossed that one of the guys falls there.
Although it's funny because I was talking to someone else who was yeah, it didn't really matter. That game didn't really matter overall. They were and it was funny. They actually said that it actually made more of an effect in let's say the 2nd round, where if the Patriots had lost that game, then they've got the 1st pick and the 33rd pick.
Right.
Now they've got the 4th pick and the 38th pick, which I know it's only 5 spots, but you can kind of get another 1st round pick if you're drafting 33rd overall. 100%. Once you get down to 38th, those options become more limited there. So that was, I found that actually really interesting that was the takeaway from that win, was that man, we dropped down in the 2nd round instead,
Usually I'm good at compartmentalizing these things, but every time I'm on the PFF mock simulator, I'm just it'd be so much nicer if I was just at the top in every round, make things a lot easier. But alas. So last thing for me, we talk about Drake May and, Mike Vrabel, the leadership that they've got on the offensive side of the ball. Terrell Williams hopefully brings that on defense. But I feel one storyline we may not be talking about enough is the fact that once Juwan Bentley went down, even players had to acknowledge there was a massive leadership gap. And some of that came from Christian Barmore not being able to lead with his play. And also, Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers, the most vocal guy on the defense, also out. It's not just one guy, but it did feel like they lost that heart and soul. And there weren't a whole lot of rah-rah guys that were really able to kind of replicate that. Now, don't necessarily always have to be a rah-rah guy, but I'm curious, especially that linebacker spot, because you mentioned Jamie Sherwood is a guy who could be on the Patriots' radar. You watch his film, big communicator, a guy who makes plays. You could see in a similar vein, but if the Jets are able to find a way to bring him back before he actually hits the market, were there any other names that kind of popped up? Because you got Zach Bond, you got Nick Bolton. These are guys who've put it on film. They have championship experience. So are there any other names they could be tied to, or are they maybe set at linebacker. I'm just really curious how that's going to go, because obviously they have guys under contract who've had success on the team, but after last season, it really kind of, at least for me, makes me feel uneasy about the future of that spot.
Yeah, don't think they're set at that spot. I think that they do want one of those kind of like Vrabel type linebackers in there, and like not like Vrabel's play style, but like the guys that he wants to coach, where like they had like David Long, who's like right around 220 pounds in the middle of their defense. Even Rashaan Evans was smaller than a prototypical Patriots linebacker. So Jamin Sherwood definitely one with it that we heard about. Zach Bond, I've heard, is going to be making like, he wants a hefty contract in free agency. So I don't think that that's one that you can necessarily like get a good value on. So that makes me hesitate a little bit, but like, yeah, Drake Greenlaw, I think would be an interesting one. I'm not sure what Nick Bolton's contract is going to wind up coming in at, but like, this isn't necessarily the worst year for some of those like more undersized type linebackers for the Patriots to define, because like Greenlaw would fit in there. I think Nick Bolton potentially could. Ernest Jones, Jamin Sherwood is the guy that we obviously mentioned, but like there does seem to be a decent amount of those guys, and they want them to still be playing like linebackers though. They don't want like passivity at that linebacker role. So they like Jamin Sherwood is someone who I think he did play safety in college, or maybe like came in the NFL as a safety, whatever it was, but he brings that linebacker mentality. So that's what you really want to look for, is guys who are smaller, who can bring some speed to the defense, but also play like a linebacker, because that is definitely something that we heard this week, is that the Patriots feel that they need more speed, especially in the front seven there. And they cannot be as slow as they were in that Belichick style defense that DeMarcus Covington and Gerard Mayer were still running last season.
It's about damn time.
I know, right? It's been years, but it makes you like, it makes you readjust your brain. I think that we might've even been talking about this in Indy, where like, you're not looking for nose tackle, space eating two gappers anymore. You're not looking for 250-pound linebackers anymore. Like, you have to look for completely different players. And it was funny, like even an agent that we were talking about, he was like, oh, my guy's like a Patriots type. He's got to like eat up a bunch of space in the middle. I was like, he was a Patriots type. I don't think he's a Patriots type anymore. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to look for another team now.
And I get excited when guys can do that. I'm like, oh, wait, no. That's not what I'm looking for. Literally, it's readjusting on the fly of like, yeah, it's nice when this guy can do this, but also, is he going to get after the passer? Can he cover and all that stuff? So, but it's nice. It's for the better. Healing.
Absolutely.
All right. So I know I said my last question was the last one, but it's not my last question. I thought of one more here. And it has to actually go, I kind of want to go to both of you guys here, because you guys were both at Indy. I unfortunately was not. Right now I'm in our lovely CLNS Media Southwest Florida studios.
Nice.
But I digress.
Yeah,
the report card that came out from the NFLPA, it was released last week while you guys were in Indianapolis. Patriots come in 31 out of 32. Obviously, we know the weight room comes in at the F. The team travel comes in at the F. Talks about ashtrays in the next to the season, things like that. But with the adjustments that are being made at Gillette Stadium, right? A new head coach coming in. Now, granted, Mayo didn't grade out that bad, but was there any fallout from this out there? Not just from the Patriots, but I guess across the league. Like, is this something that's going to deter free agents from coming here? Is there a thought that, well, this is all going to go up once Drake May and Mike Vrabel come in here and our facility is all set and, we're just going to be fine? Or is there, I guess, a concern around the Patriots that, things really need to change organizationally before they get back to their winning ways?
Taylor, did you want to take this one first, or do you want me to jump in?
Mine is pretty simple. I think the only thing that matters at the end of the day is money.
Yeah.
I think like as much as nice as it is, and we know they're going to have the new facility, I think that's a pretty big piece of it as well. But I mean, it didn't seem like anybody else thought it was a huge deal. It's more embarrassing. It's like, damn, your digs kind of suck. That's about it. Like, if you're going to pay guys premium prices, which it sounds like they're going to do, I think that's all that matters at the end of the day. It's just, you'd like to not be one of the worst teams in the league when you got all this money and you have championship aspirations and your weight room sucks. But small potatoes.
Certainly don't think it helps. I think the fact that they are like that there's going to be a new facility certainly does help. Am I allowed to swear on this, by the way?
Hell yeah.
Freaking I didn't want to say the real F word, but yeah, hell yeah, you are.
So in response to the report card from like two completely different factions of people who were with the team last year, like when bringing up the report card, two separate people said the exact words, the plane shit is real. Like that it's like,
interesting.
It's bad. It is not. it's like they need to do something about that. And maybe they don't. Who knows? Like maybe they're just like, deal with it. It's an old plane. You guys are gonna have to live. But if I'm the Patriots, I try to do something else with that and try to use your existing planes for something else, because like people really did seem genuinely unhappy with the team plane. It's old.
Which is so bizarre to me, because it's this, everyone talks about aircraft and it's branded with the Patriot stuff and it looks phenomenal. And the fact that the inside, you can
we've never seen the inside, and now we know why.
Crazy. But
it's like, think of the worst airplane that you've been on recently, like Spirit, right? The worst Spirit flight, and that doesn't have ashtrays. Like, it's that old.
Yeah.
People were just doing that. I don't even know what a plane like that would look like, which is pretty rough.
Yeah, I think that from looking online, I believe it's like a 1991 plane, that's
got it at a bargain.
That's an old plane.
Isn't that going over like international waters?
They do not. They charter a flight when they go to London.
Oh, okay, thank goodness, because that's scary.
And like that was another thing that I heard, is that like they're like, oh hell yeah, let's go to London. That means that we get to fly a different plane.
They look forward to the international trip.
Yeah, exactly. God. Which is not ideal, but that's the position that they're in right now. And I don't know. I think they got to do something about that one, because you don't want to feel unsafe when you're traveling.
Right.
Yeah, that's very important, especially with everything that's going on right now with planes and everything.
There's crazy shit going on with planes right now. It's also like when you get into like an elevator and you're like, is this thing really up to code? Like, is this thing going to snap on me and send me down?
Amit and I actually were in a hotel where we were literally saying that and decided to take the stairs. And the next time we tried to get the elevator, it was shut down.
There you go. Hey,
it's real.
Yeah. There's some good instincts there on your part. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I believe that's going to do it here for this episode of the Patriots Daily Podcast. Doug, thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome. Like I mentioned before, him and Andrew released quite the banger on the BostonHerald.com, as well as the Boston Herald paper itself. Go check it out inside the Patriots offseason plan in Mike Vrabel's first season. Taylor, anything else before we get out of here? Do you have any final questions for Doug? Or are we pretty much set to move on into the week that is the Patriots here?
Let's get into the week, bud. You're free, Doug. Enjoy the rest of your day, pal. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, guys. We will be back later on in the week. TBD. We'll have a mailbag coming and a bunch of other great content here on Patriots Press Pass. So rate, review, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you soon. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will see you next time. Peace out, everyone.